The Attitude Era, a time remembered for Texas rattlesnakes kicking out the ass, great ones becoming megastars, some of the most iconic moments in all of wrestling, and blokes beating up cheese. Wait, what? Oh, you better believe that went down in this legendary era, folks, and that is not the only weird thing or just plain stupid thing that some wrestlers were made to do during this crazy time in the world of WWE, or F, or whatever. So with all that said, I am Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are the 10 stupidest things WWE Attitude Era stars had to do. Number 10, Raven murder Moppy. Now look, this was far from as stupid as wrestling in general ever got with the Raven character, with WCW's rewriting of the gimmick's history leaving a bigger stain on Scott Levy's legacy than this charmingly stupid backstage skit. But charmingly stupid is still stupid, folks. The former ECW champion was embroiled in a feud with Perry Saturn when he fed a mop into a wood chipper and laughed maniacally, going as Johnny Polo as he possibly could to get it over. He even played ventriloquist just to voice Moppy's terror as it got itself into the chipper. Now yes, it is a ludicrous piece of crap as a segment, but it is a testament to how over just about everything still was during this time, that an audible gasp could be heard as the head of the mop met its demise. Oh, the poor thing. Saturn sold it pretty well too, to be honest, perfecting his role as the hardest mother effer ever to be a bit of a daft lad. Number 9, Beaver Cleavage / Chaz shooting on his gimmick and his girlfriend. Now there will be more on the Headbangers elsewhere in this list, but WWE got really damn weird with former member Mosh during a long injury layoff for Thrasher in 1999. Borrowing from 1950s sitcom Leave It to Beaver, a dreaded Vince McMahon, Vince Russo sweet spot, the rename Beaver Cleavage was mad into his mam's giant boobs, which were focused on when the script wasn't calling for puns about genitals. And when these vignettes failed to bring a one-dimensional gimmick to life, because why would they, the company admitted defeat via one of the odder work shoots of the era. Beaver dropped the gimmick cold in a promo before returning the following week as normal bloke Chaz alongside girlfriend Mariana, who was no longer cast as his mother. You keeping up? Because I'm not. Until he dumped her and then, according to her accounts, physically abused her. Light on ideas for the lower card act, the company inexplicably decided to allege violence in the terminated relationship. Yeah, that'll work. Mariana sported black eyes and members of the roster and even referees were going hard on Chaz. Until a returning Thrasher revealed GTV clips of her applying makeup to set Chaz up for dumping her. In other words, like you really needed the reminder, do not revisit 1999 for progressive social commentary. Or in this case anyway, half-decent wrestling angles. Number 8, the Headbangers working cones. The Headbangers 1999 reunion barely registered in comparison to the other enormous money-drawing stories being told at the time, which is perhaps why Thrasher and Mosh elected to make a bizarre change to their aesthetic as the new millennium approached. It was sort of funny, like once, but not the kind of funny where you laugh out loud funny. And I mean especially not with The Rock legitimately popping your daft every other segment. So it wasn't really that funny at all, really. Shocking as it may seem, the cones didn't make a difference in the trajectory of the former tag team champions. I know, I'm stunned. By 2000, crowds were tired of Sean Waltman's textured television matches, so if punters weren't buying him anymore, what chance did the used-to-be-over Marilyn Manson fans from 1997 have? In summary, if you ever want to know how quickly time passed during the Attitude Era, look for either Mosh and Thrasher's bouncing furry chests or crowd responses to X-Pac. Number 7, Kurt Angle disgraced a flag. When Kurt Angle first won his Olympic gold medal with a broken frickin' neck, the prospect of entering pro wrestling seemed like such a long shot that his infamously scrubbed ECW cameo made more sense than a brief spot with one of the big two. Honouring an agreement with Taz and Paul Heyman to have a look around what he most likely assumed was strictly a local territory with limited television. And he wasn't entirely wrong in that assessment, really. His face never made it on screen thanks to his furious protest over an angle featuring Raven crucifying the Sandman later in the show. 3 years later, and now partially trained and primed for a WWE career, he clearly wasn't half as fussy. Though Angle wouldn't debut formally until the Survivor Series, the company decided to soft launch him in a throwaway Sunday Night Heat segment with Tiger Ali Singh. First portrayed as an American that'd do anything for $1, Angle feigned blowing his nose on the Stars and Stripes before doing the same to an Indian flag when the millionaire's back was turned. He then dropped him with 2 quality amateur-style throws to tease the work to come. As dated as all this jingoism felt in 1999, it should be noted that the fans still actually went insane for the bit, almost certainly vindicating the company's call to aim low for one of their highest caliber signings. Number 6, meet to Shag to work. Meat, as the sex slave of Terry Runnels, Jacqueline and Ryan Shamrock, was perhaps the closest WWE ever came to trying to level an horrifically misogynistic playing field during the Attitude Era. But Shawn Stasiak's gimmick was one of the dafter mid-card distractions of the day. Oh, and the perpetually pissed off women went by the name PMS, of course, just in case you thought females had a hope of escaping one entry on a list with their dignity intact. Keen to exact revenge on the wrestlers they'd been wronged by at one point or another, the trio mobilised their skills around a newcomer called Meat, who was more than happy to try and satisfy their demands in the ring as well as in the bedroom. Yep, Attitude Era was a balmy old time. The plan's obvious flaws showed themselves pretty swiftly, with Meat often far too exhausted from all his pre-gaming to deal with the opponents they'd line up. Crass, time-filling nonsense, but harebrained all the same. This was destined to keep Shawn Stasiak rooted to the very bottom of the card. Number 5, Steve Blackman beat up some cheese. Now there was method to this madness, but it was madness all the same. When Al Snow and Steve Blackman teamed up to modest success in 2000, it spoke to the do no wrong form of WWE. And Vince McMahon's inbuilt frustration with those that don't quite have it in them to be all singing, all dancing goofs as well as rock hard ass kickers. Not everyone has that range. As a silent assassin character debuting in late 1997, Steve Blackman had done remarkably well for himself as an example of the latter. But a floundering, heel-turned Al Snow was quickly reformed as a jester trying to find an ounce of joviality in this very, very serious man. Ultimately, all he and they discovered was a bit of stag-do-style forced fun. Settling on the name Head Cheese, yep, that's what they went for, they unveiled a mascot for their WrestleMania match against TNA called Chester McCheeserton. Yep, this stunk worse than aging Limburger, even when Blackman got some heat back by beating the hell out of him. Number 4, Al Snow campaigned to get his action figure back. Something else in Al Snow's life that armed Mick Foley to the breasticles with jokes at his expense. And this time it's nothing to do with yet another of Snow's aborted gimmicks. Not technically anyway. Yes, Snow moved on from his cult classic psychotic persona alongside Head eventually, but it became his long-awaited and overdue calling card when he broke through on a WWE show, once again penetrating the mainstream consciousness. Typical for unlucky Al though, the merchandise check dried up amidst an absurd and accidental national scandal. An action figure of the Job Squad leader alongside his beloved mannequin friend Head was pulled from Walmart due to apparently promoting spousal abuse as well as murder and dismemberment. The protestation from the store and the pressure groups that forced the move showed little to no interest in the context. WWE featured the moral panic on their show as part of yet another mental decline for the Snow character. Clearly glad to yet again be thought of as too edgy for parental types they'd one day caught again. Number 3, Goga, just everything. Pick any Raw from late 1998 to mid-2000 and it's honestly hard to get a read on the audience profile beyond mostly drunk dudes. The company had done a magnificent job of securing that advertiser-friendly base. And were keen to point out that the children of Hulkamania were now the teens and young adults of the Attitude Era. But was that really true? Millions dropped off in the mid-1990s, but who's to say those were the ones who came back when Steve Austin and The Rock got hot? Instead of, I don't know, college fraternities that just couldn't get enough of Stone Cold Steve Austin's beer-soaked carnage, and the Great One's hilarious command of a catchphrase. All this is to say that bringing John Tenter back as the Earthquake that had quietly departed in 1994 probably wasn't the smartest move. But it wasn't the scale of problem that required Goga as a fix. Masked in order to slot him in with the oddities, he was then booked as a South Park aficionado to ingratiate him to the masses as a babyface. The kids like South Park, well, we'll give them South Park. His look was never stupider than at the co-promotional peak. As if working in a Cartman shirt while carrying the enormous doll wasn't enough, he also had a cheesy poof stapled to his damn head. Goga is the masked ex-natural disaster that didn't fall through a wall. So how did he end up looking just as stupid? Number 2, The Big Show. Sell the Undertaker's stupid story. This whole thing felt like a punchline at The Big Show's expense, really. By 1999, The Undertaker was such a company legend that he could go out there and say whatever the hell he liked and probably get away with it. Well done, dead man, you did it again. Hey, you could learn something about the business from this man. He's a veteran. Go and get some beer. Meanwhile, and based on all the politics afterwards, this probably wasn't by design, the dead man's legendarily awful promo on the August 16th Raw was so mind-numbingly thick that supposed savior Chris Jericho was perfectly placed to interrupt it. Even Paul Bearer's character had been sadistic enough in storylines to think this cartoonish drivel was perfectly within the realms of sanity. Recent WCW signing Paul White though, the guy who'd been world champion within his first year, the guy who'd shaken off a Son of Andre persona, Paul White White, even as the Big Show and new bestie of The Undertaker, could not credibly stand there as the American deadass spoke of making coats with each other's skin in the desert and eating snakes for tea. This image right here tells the inconvenient truth, doesn't it? Never has a guy with such evident range struggled more to find the right face. Number 1. The Undertaker tattoos Santa's ass. Now look, I personally don't subscribe to whatever brand of insanity it is that encourages fans to leave comments on YouTube screaming into their screens about their precious Attitude Era. But, lost in the chaos of those fist-typed missives about PG sucking all the fun out of the product, is actually a poorly articulated thirst for actual chaos. Now that, against the ultra-polished and too slick for its own good WWE of today, or at least a few years back, was not really an unfair request. Take this image right here, for example. This absolutely insane shot of The Undertaker engraving a WWE logo into Santa's ass cheek wasn't because he was taking overdue revenge on a Ted DiBiase project from 1995, nor because he'd mistaken him for Midian and just really enjoyed doing it the first time around. Nope, The Undertaker is scouring Santa Claus over here just to flog a few t-shirts. So this shot came from the front of a merchandise catalogue that would later also feature poor Father Christmas going through a table courtesy of the Dudley Boys. Such was your average teen t-shirt fan's lust for seeing the big guy get what he apparently deserved, regardless of if he'd been naughty or nice.